So here is a use case for Lambda at edge where you can use it to route to a different origin and reduce the latency of some calls from CloudFront Edge. So how does that work? Well, say we're using the classic architecture of an S3 bucket, and then we'll have a CloudFront Edge location. So it turns out that if we link these two together, then it's going to work. But in case the edge location is far away from the bucket, then the first request to get some files may take a long time. So how do we solve for this? Well, in the case, for example, where the users are in Europe and they want to access our edge location, if the content is already cached, then it's perfect. The object is returned with very, very little latency. So this is how the edge location works. But to get the object into the cache, because the CloudFront edge location is to make a request from Europe into the US East 1 region, it can have some latency added, which may not be acceptable to you. So how do we solve for this? Well, we're going to create a second S3 bucket, this time in EU West 2, and we're going to set up S3 cross-region replication across my two buckets. The reason we do so is that all the content of bucket 1 is now in bucket 2 in a region closer to the user. Next, we're going to create a Lambda at edge function, which is going to be triggered by your CloudFront edge locations. And what's going to happen here is that whenever the users are accessing the CloudFront edge location, the Lambda at edge function is going to look where the request is coming from. And if it comes from a region that is closer to the first bucket, then it's going to direct user to the first bucket. But else, if the request comes from a region closer to the second bucket, then it's going to modify the origin request and send it to my second origin. The reason is that the data is the same across both regions, and so therefore, the Lambda at edge function will help us route the request to the bucket that is the closest to the edge location, thus reducing the latency of our first call to get a file into an edge location. Then, of course, the object will be returned and will be good to go. So it's a tricky pattern, but a very useful one to reduce the latency of the first call of a file into the CloudFront edge location based on Lambda at edge and different origins. So that's it for this lecture. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.